Welcome. Today we are here to speak with Dr. Ayelet Dassa, who is an associate professor and director of the master's program at Bar Ilan University. And we are very excited to welcome Dr. Ayelet to talk to us in the WFMT Research and Ethics series for 2023 to 2026. So welcome, Ayelet.
Thank you so much.
So you know that you're here to talk to us today about research, so I'm going to get started. We'd like to, if you could tell us a little bit about some of your own research. So what kind of projects have you done, and what kind of topics and methods have you used?
So it's a great opportunity to think about my research and talk about my research. So thank you for that. I think I've worked as a music therapist for over 15 years before I started getting involved in research. So I believe it's very important that as music therapists, we should have enough clinical experience before diving into research. I think my first big research project was, of course, my PhD work. And after seeing for many years the impact singing has on how people with dementia communicate, I decided to further investigate it through research. So that was over, I think, 12 years ago. And since then, I've been dedicated my research to the benefits people with dementia and their caregivers. I did some project on home-based music therapy and online music therapy and other training programs. I also supervise PhD students who are working on research in this area. And I think that even though I'm, involved in many other projects as an educator, music therapy educator as well, my main focus is on music therapy for people with dementia and their families. So that's the most, that's my main focus. And I think methodology is quite a question, and as a music therapist for me. So in my PhD research back then, I used the mixed method approach. I believe that combining qualitative and quantitative measures really suited what I needed, what I wanted to explore back then. I wanted to understand the changes in language abilities following singing. So it suits me really well back then, but I think since then I have tended to rely solely on qualitative methods because my focus eventually, when I look at it, it's mostly on people's experiences. And I believe that numbers don't fully reflect their real life circumstances, experiences of people, numbers in rating scales, mostly in my opinion, fail to truly capture the full holistic experience of participants in research. And they offer sometimes a very narrow, sometimes even unreliable perspective. Because I've been part of some research during my work in a care facility for people with dementia for many years. And I've encountered all kinds of situations. Family members, caregivers in nursing home really struggled with questionnaires. And sometimes it even seemed emotionally inappropriate or poorly tailored to their circumstances. I can maybe give an example for that. For instance, asking a caregiver in a facility if they feel they sometimes treat residents like objects. That's a question from the Maslach Caregiver Burden Scale, for example. So this question can be even offensive and distressing. And people, I really, it ingrained in me the experience of people getting mad at me for asking them such a question. So, and may sometimes the staff, the nursing aides, was really anxious about and suspicious. Why are we asking them these questions? What are our goal? What we try to achieve? Why are we checking up on them or something like that? And so all the idea of using questionnaires to measure to get numeric outcomes really I found it really, taking me off track. On the other hand, when you ask people to tell you about their experience or to share their stories, and I really realized that they really wanted to talk. They wanted to talk about their work. They wanted to talk about if it was partners. They wanted to talk about their experience taking care of their loved ones. So I think that for me, qualitative paradigms, if we're talking about case study research, narrative research, or phenomenological methods, that was eventually more suitable, in my opinion, for gaining a fuller picture with layers of information and really get a full perspective.
Mhm.
I can sometimes use questionnaires on a certain topics, but not as a questionnaire. So I can take I'm doing a research on a specific topic, and I can take questionnaires as a starting point and integrate some questions from that into the interview questions. So I can, or as topics for a discussion in a focus group, for example. So I can take some ideas, but not use questionnaires as in itself.
Mhm. I think, your research resonates a lot with me, that being my area as well of dementia and palliative care. And I also, I lean towards qualitative research, and I've done a lot of mixed methods research as well. But I think what you've highlighted in your discussion, or, is sharing about personhood, and how the qualitative methods are able to maybe better align with being more person-centered and really trying to find out how the music is maybe helping or not helping, as opposed to if it's helping or not, which is more of a yes or no. And a lot of times I think we know it helps, but we have to understand more
Yeah,
the mechanism, like why is it perhaps helping
exactly.
this person? So um, it's interesting that you share that you were a clinician for
Mhm.
many years before being a researcher. And do you think that that has guided you kind of in terms of being able to, um, I guess, design studies that are more impactful, or that really assess what it is that you're
Mm.
designing to learn more about?
Yeah, I think I think I have a dual role as a therapist first and then as a researcher. Okay, so I think it's heavily influenced my choice of research methodology. I think that having an experience with this population is really important. I don't
Mhm.
believe we can really start research with material we are not familiar with, a population we're not familiar with. So I
Mhm.
feel that it really impacts the way I do research. Um, and I think, overall, if we're talking about, mixed method or choosing that way or another, I feel there's a challenge in using what we actually trying to ask is, like you say, how it helps, or not if it helps or not. And we're actually assessing emotional processes and therapeutic relationships. And it's very hard to assess this and to get an explanation on a relationship from numerical outcomes. So I
Mhm.
think to understand an experience, that's the way I believe is more appropriate. And even if we think of scales, it's you have to give an answer from 1 to 5, or it's how do you measure such a huge, and people are dealing with such emotional distress, or I think it's narrowing down to something. We lose the idea of really exploring. Um,
Mhm. I think even with persons with dementia, I'm sure you've encountered, the challenge in trying to find some standardized tests anyway that people can accurately rate themselves on things like pain or even on their mood, right? When they're in more advanced stages of dementia.
like
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, really. I think that's our next challenge in music therapy and dementia care, how we get the voice of the people with dementia themselves and not rely solely on caregiver or family member reports or observations. So that's what we usually do. But I think that's a big challenge. And I saw some nice avenues going that way, using music during interviews to enable people with dementia to express themselves more directly. I think that's a good path. We should go in that path.
Mm.
Find ways to really listen to them, or and of course questionnaire has are out of the questions here. It's not that.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to also about the importance of co-design, right? So in like we want to hear the voice of the person in our study that the music is supposed to be somehow impacting or helping in some way. So I really appreciate you raising that point, right, of co-design and importance of really understanding the perspective from the person and not solely from their caregivers or others.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I also think you speak very well about the ethical responsibility that sometimes challenges a music therapist because we are therapists first, right? And
Mm.
so that can, I think, impact when we are inviting people to participate in our research, right? Knowing a bit more about their circumstances. Um,
Mhm.
we always want it to be more beneficial than potentially unbeneficial or harmful in any way. So
Exactly.
we're raising that.
Yeah.
I wonder, given the variety of experience you've had, because you've also supervised students, like what's surprising or intriguing or something that you found out that I guess you didn't think you'd find out in the research process?
I think that's the best thing in research, to get surprised, because I usually go out for research. As I said, I have my clinical experience and I see things, so I want to check them and explore them further. But I think it will be really boring if I won't be surprised at all. So I love being surprised by my research. So it's exciting to discover new perspectives or angles I hadn't thought of before. For example, during my research on singing and language, I figured that people will sing and probably will converse more and talk. They have more spontaneous speech after singing, because that's what I observed during the years. So that was an outcome I was looking forward to, and I really, counted every word spoken, and the outcomes really show a clear increase in the numbers of words and exchanges. But what surprised me the most was analyzing what they were actually talking about, because the session included, both singing and spontaneous conversation in between the songs. So I was, I expected much of the discussion to center around the songs themselves, but doing qualitative analysis, I revealed another new layer that was really surprising for me, that a large part of their conversation focused on their experience as a group, as a social entity that met to sing together. We are here to sing together. So they complemented each other. They emphasized the importance of being together and singing. And the funny thing, sometimes they complain that we're talking too much and we have to sing. We came here to sing. But that was the whole idea. I wanted to check how they talk about after singing, if their speech is more coherent and more fluent. And they complain about talking too much, let's sing. So that was, I think that was a really unexpected finding that taught me a lot about the power of the group dynamic. And even when language abilities were impaired, it became clear that the group was a significant social space for them. They had a collective experience of singing together, and they expressed it in their verbal interaction. And I'm talking about people with in moderate, most of them were in moderate stage of dementia with less, where verbal fluency wasn't so high. So it was really, I think it was exciting and
Mhm.
important. And that's, for example, a layer I would never get in measuring, only measuring. It was really give you a whole new perspective of my clinical work.
Yeah, I mean, that resonates with some of the research that I've done with singing, with,
Mm,
in groups with people that have dementia and caregivers, and just that importance of the group setting and I think that's the beauty of being a therapist. And then if you're a researcher who's there and observing things that are happening in the sessions, to actually see the engagement, right? And to hear that conversation and to see the results like in action, right? To see that importance of social bonding and that the music,
mm,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
That leads us nicely into, I guess, how do you see your research comparing to other projects in other parts of the world?
Mm.
I guess
Yeah.
methodology wise, or other people that have
Mhm.
investigated the topic.
Yeah, I think this specific topic of singing and language abilities, I think when I started planning my research back then, I realized that there were almost no publication on this topic and the impact of music therapy on language abilities, except one. I think one significant article was by our esteemed colleague, Dr. Melissa Mercadal-Brotons. So back in 2000, Brotons and Cougar published a study on the effects of singing on language abilities. And that was a kind of a key resource for my work. But I'm really surprised to see that since then, and I published in 2014, and there's such little research in this area. I, I realized that, music therapists probably, widely acknowledge the role of singing in improving language abilities, but it hasn't been major focus of study in dementia care. Most of the research seems to center, if we're talking on language, we are talking about language rehabilitation with stroke survivors, but the idea of focusing on language abilities in degenerative conditions such as dementia is largely overlooked. And if we consider how vital language is, and people, I think that the main maybe people complain that they are losing communication with their loved ones, and they suffer. That's the main consideration they have. We cannot communicate anymore. So considering it's such an important aspect, it's surprising that this area hasn't seen more progress in research. Most
Mhm.
of the research focus on the behavioral challenges uh, and and less on exploring ways to preserve or enhance language abilities. But I'll take, a responsibility for that as well, because since that I moved on to other research topics, and focusing mainly on people at home with their and how to integrate music therapy. And but I think I would really love to go back to it's still something that I left behind and that I think that need more progress. It needs more exploration in music therapy, because we can really affect language abilities, and it's critical.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
what you've also highlighted, which is so important for new researchers, maybe that aren't kind of, trying to plan their studies. And I think probably you're very inspirational to your students. Like you're looking for the gap, right? So we look to the evidence, and you talked about Dr. Markadal Broughton's, right? And kind of that was the study that, you looked at and what had been done. And that's helpful, I think, for people new to research, right? You're going to look to the what's been
exactly.
done and where is the gap that you could potentially add to the body. So you've
Mhm.
highlighted a gap for some people looking for some research ideas in dementia care.
Mhm.
I guess that this might lead you, because I mean, you did mention one study, but I wonder how internationally, if there's other research that's inspired you from around the world.
I've been following all, research on music therapy and dementia, and I think there is a lot of. I really tend to research that look on a sense of self in people with dementia, or musical identities, or Amy Barrett, for example. She's not a music therapist. I believe she's working in Australia right now, in a university in Australia, and she's talking about. She did approach the idea of language abilities following music therapy. She's not a music therapist herself, but she looked at from psychological aspect about the sense of self of people with dementia and their identities. So I found this very, um, it's that's the idea I like to embrace into my research as well. And I think it leads me also to the idea of asking people with dementia, getting them to be more, to cooperate more fully, and to listen to their voices in research.
Yeah. I mean, you've written about it as well, right? You've got some
Yeah,
publications.
a little bit.
Yeah, you have,
Yeah,
don't be so modest. You have written. I can think of something in music and medicine, and amongst other
yeah,
publications in this area, if people want to search you and have a look at some of your wonderful writing.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
I guess,
Mm.
you also kind of highlighted for us, maybe where you'd want to potentially go one day. But I guess when you're thinking about your research projects, like what motivates you, and what kind of helps you decide on your next research endeavor?
Uh, at the start, it was really my main goal was to understand what I was observing in my practice. So to fully understand or to explore it further. But over time, it has expanded. I find myself seeking for the best ways to support people with dementia and their caregivers, how I promote the use of music in all its forms, and in a home environment, care facility, because I really believe that we have a powerful tool. We have something that we can, give others and help in such an incredibly challenging journey. I think not just for the person experiencing it, but to, their entire support system. So I think that we have I'm searching for the right way and to make a meaningful difference for these people. So that's the main goal.
Sounds like
Um,
motivation. Right. You want to impact the daily life of someone, as well as their support systems.
Yes, because yeah, I believe that they are out there's they sit there and they sometimes left alone, and we can bring something and help them. We can really make a difference. Even just a tiny difference is a large difference for these people. So
Yeah. I think that's another really wonderful message to highlight. Sometimes, I think people think that the research or, has to involve, so many people, right? And yes, it's important to have large studies that involve multiple participants, but I also think at the heart of music therapy, is helping, right? It is making a difference in someone's life, right? And if your research can do that for the participants in your study and potentially inspire others to make changes in their practice, then that's definitely very valuable and
mm,
important. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that it should also stay grounded in the field. Because I think the idea is to start from the practical. We're starting from our clinical work. And then, so we start from real world challenges we encounter, and then we conduct the research, and then we explore it further, and then we bring that knowledge back to practice. So I think that's movement from practice to research and back. That's what makes it worthwhile in a way. Because if we do practical hands-on research and we examine like special programs or intervention, so we also uncover new ideas, but we also understand our work more fully and as a clinician. So it's back and forth from research to practice.
Mhm. So it sounds like you as a researcher get a lot of benefits out of the learning as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds motivating as well to keep it up. I wonder if you could, if you were talking to a new long-term care home and they didn't know about music therapy and you wanted to talk about your research, like how would you go about sharing your research results with others that maybe don't know about music therapy, or, are maybe less used to research processes? How would you go?
Mhm. I think that it's important because we have to translate in a way ourselves, and it's difficult when we don't have numbers. I think people like numbers, and if I'm dealing with more experiences, and it's more difficult to communicate that, especially for the people who hold the budget for a program or but I think eventually, if we deal with things that are, all the professional in the field deal with them. If we're talking about, for example, the challenging behaviors, so the psychogeriatric deals with the same issue, with the same how to help the people at home with anxiety. So we're addressing issues that all professionals in this area face. So if I'm dealing with this in my research, I can communicate it
Mhm.
more easily. For instance, in a recent PhD research project I supervised, we explored what is the best ways to integrate music therapy into the daily lives of couples where one partner has dementia. And people at home deals with a lot of challenges, and they call the doctor to add more prescription, and sometimes they have limited answers for these issues. And over the years, I led a lot of workshops for family members and caregivers, and I developed training programs designed to make music accessible for everyday use. But the big challenge was always sustainability. How much of this really lingers on? How can we achieve, any lasting effect once the research or this program ends? So And I feel that in this study, after so many years, I felt that we finally started to crack that question in a way. So we developed a program that worked well. Of course, we still need further research and, but I felt that it gave me an answer and a specific, this is a good program. I can now, we needed a collaborative effort to develop this program. And we wouldn't have reached this understanding if we didn't launch this, we didn't explore it in research. So this insights it has practical implication because I can communicate this. Now I have a program and we explored it in research, and I can approach organizations like Alzheimer's Association in my country and propose to them to incorporate music therapy. So research is plays a critical role in encouraging institutions to adopt this intervention or, to support this intervention.
Yeah.
But you were asking about how we communicate, and it's really it's a challenge. It's a challenge. There's no doubt that we need to find ways to communicate research findings effectively, even to the public, not just for professionals. I had some incident with, had along, it was the time I wanted to try, we were exploring agitation in a nursing home resident, with nursing home resident. And we did research that really, had a lot of impact. Back then it was, I come back to the same, idea that I have numbers back then. So it really made a lot of impact. And we try to focus, I wanted to try something else with the resident, and instead of the existing literature talked about mainly focus on calming music to reduce agitation. So instead, I wanted to use, I said, let's try something else. So we used rhythmic, upbeat music, but music that was deeply rooted in their cultural and musical world, something that they all were familiar with. There was music beloved by the resident. And we conducted observations, alternating with 15 minutes of that familiar rhythmic music with 15 minutes of no music. So the results, which were quantitative in this case, were clear. While the music played, people joined in the singing, tapped to the rhythm, and the signs of agitation reduced. Like, getting up from their chairs or shouting. Instead of shouting, they start singing. So, and without the music, those behaviors returned. And of course, we alternated starting with music and without it in different departments. And the findings were really consistent. So this research gained significant attention, was widely cited, and even made it to the newspapers. And the funny thing that the newspaper headline for this study read, "Upbeat music is good for Alzheimer's patients." That was the title, and from the title, one can conclude that any upbeat music is good.
Yeah.
So I got phones from students and colleagues about this title, and you taught us otherwise. It contradicted what I had always emphasized. Music should be primarily culturally appropriate, tailored to the individual. So they gave the simplistic and misleading interpretation of the research. So we have to, really be aware when we want to share our research, make it available to the public. We need to remember that sometimes headlines in, especially in newspaper, They want to, get the attention of people and sometimes distort the
Mm.
essence of the study.
Yeah. I mean, you raised so many good points in what you were raising. Initially when talking about like how do we communicate with other professionals, you noted, the use of common language can be helpful, right? So if
Mhm.
looking at things like agitation, that's maybe the same thing they're looking at. So it's helpful to talk about it in similar ways that they might be referring to it. And I think also you raised the importance of not only educating, other allied healthcare professionals, but the public, right? Which in a lot of ways can help gain momentum for music therapy
Yeah,
if their
yeah,
support.
yeah.
But the challenge of sometimes the media not always accurately representing what's truly happening. And thank you again for raising the importance of cultural responsiveness and the importance of considering someone's experience with music, the cultural appropriateness of music, and how that definitely does have an impact for many people in their experience. Yeah, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful points. I guess one of the things I'd like to just get your opinion on as we're coming to a close today is thinking about, why is music therapy research so important? Like, why do we do the research, and kind of why is it important to this discipline?
I think that it really helped us understand more fully our work and even, we get more experience from the research. As I said, going from the practice to the research and back to practice, it really enlarge our clinical understanding. I think it's important. And I think it's kind of a step after, gaining a lot of clinical experience. I sometimes hold back students who say, I want to go to start exploring. I said, first go to work, do your clinical work, get experience, understand what you're dealing with, and then look upon research, because we really need to have an experience to know what we want to explore. Otherwise, we are not familiar with the situation, with the challenges. So I think it's important to gain this understanding and then to really explore our work, to expand our knowledge, and to communicate and to, bring music therapy out there if for everyone, especially for people with dementia and their caregivers. So I think the research is in this case important.
Hmm. Yes, for sure. So you've made such an impact in this area. So I think as the profession, we want to thank you as well for advancing our understanding of the use of music, especially with caregivers, and dyads and the preservation of personhood are really wonderful areas of your research. So I hope people do look up some of those publications. I guess on that note, is there anything else you'd like to share with us that I haven't asked you, or words of wisdom to anyone that's new or scared about research, wondering what to do, how to get started?
I think to get started from the basic, from your own experience, and nothing is little, nothing is not important. Or if you see something and you have an intuitive feeling about it that you want to explore it further, just go ahead. Look, go to the literature, go see what's going on, who's investigated, who explored. I think it's really um, powerful when you look at researchers and, you read new publication and you realize people have already written about what you experience, and it's give you back to your clinical work. Um, it gives you back something that help you as a clinician. I think it's important.
Mm. It's true.
Mm.
There is so much good research that's happening, and sometimes what's not happening is the collaborations or the people not knowing about others' research. So I think that's one area we can also continue to build alliances and teams. And I'm very honored to be part of a group with you, a special interest group, National
Yeah,
Association for
my
Music,
honor.
with Dr. Melissa Mercadal-Bratton as our head of that. But on behalf of the World Federation, our members, and all those that tune in, thank you very much, Dr. Dassa, for sharing your research, and we wish you all the best in further research.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.